Welcome to this episode of At the Core, the intersection between neuroscience and fitness, where I have the joy and the opportunity each month to speak to a special guest that is a high performance mover. And in that, we get to learn so much more about how they move and how they experience movement on a neuroscience level. Today's special guest is Dr. Jacob Weiss. After completing his BSc from Princeton University and PhD in biomechanical informatics at Vanderbilt University, he founded Do Good and Juggle, a social enterprise with a mission to help people reimagine the stories they tell themselves about what they can and can't do. He has been invited to present and perform at the White House, national TV appearances, and corporate events and conferences for leading brands and companies. Among many other things, Jacob is the director of HandEyeBody Academy, which teaches hand-eye coordination exercises that are creative, fun, and accessible for all ages and abilities. Welcome, Dr. Jacob, and thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be part of the program.
So I'm going to start off with a motto that I saw: change the stories you tell yourself and about what you can and can't do. And honestly, our entire episode could be on just this topic,
Sure.
About how chemicals for mood releases and the Tourette matrix on a neuro biomechanical aspect, and predictability and comfort zone versus pain and unpredictability. I mean, we could go on and on a neuroplastic level about that very profound statement. But can you answer that for us? Like, where does that come from and how do you approach that?
Yeah, so a lot of my approach with it is really how do you take, all of what you're talking about from the deeper neuroscience side, how do you make it something that people can connect with? So a lot of what I do with my hand-eye-body exercises and training programs, it's exercises that are accessible for people at any ability level. And so the whole idea behind it is that when you see someone doing a movement, whether it's someone juggling 5 balls or just someone doing a stretch or pose that you think is something, you might see it and say, oh, I couldn't do that, right? It's being able to catch yourself saying, I can't do that in your head, and being able to listen to it and then change that mode. So it's not about just, here's this specific technique to change that thinking. I really think about it as practice it. The more you practice putting yourself in the situation where you can hear that and change that thought, especially when it's not a big project or a threatening type context, and more of a play and something that's not your key area that you're really focused on, then you have that chance to say, oh, I heard myself say it. Let me practice saying it differently. Say, okay, I can't do that yet, but if I really put the time into it, I could make that happen. And so that's what it's really about from what I do with the movement exercises, but just that mindset in general. If you can find ways to get into a beginner mindset with a variety of things, then you're practicing hearing yourself say that.
I think that's a really huge important aspect. And just the step of being willing to try something new, not fearing failure, not fearing change, I think is an important concept that can be, extrapolated out to how we treat ourselves and how we move in our unpredictable world. But also it's that idea of when you do accomplish it, when you do actually achieve that thing that was once, an illusion, a thing that was never going to be on your radar, something you can accomplish, is huge for confidence and psyche to try other new things.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you really feel it, especially with movement, when it's a movement that you thought you couldn't do, and then you're able to wow, that just happened, right? You
Right.
really feel it. And even when I'm teaching moves with HandEyeBody, it's like, I'll ask, did you feel that? It's not just, did you figure it out, but you really feel it. And so
Right.
that full body feeling is something that you can really tap back into at another time of really using that as an anchor to, okay, I remember before I said I couldn't do it, and now I remember doing it and what it felt like. So even if I'm in this other project or goal that I still feel like I can't do it yet, I remember what it felt like and I can think back to that.
Completely. And you mentioned this importance of play, focusing on the fun, the novelty. And I know from a neuroplastic aspect, as we talk about movement and this intersection between neuroscience, how that actually influences our learning. How do you find that people start to play again? Because you work with an age range of kids that are comfortable playing and adults that haven't played in decades.
Well, and play can look different to different people. So to an adult or maybe an athlete, adding an element of play might be a challenge, right? So especially an athlete, it might be adding how many of this kind of move can you do in a minute, and can you beat that time? Or even if you have a team working together, can the team work together as a group, as a unit, to have a better time than the one before? Or even scrimmaging against each other, if you're used to that, that's a form of play too. So it can be that, like, again, with athletes or people may want to challenge themselves or each other. And then kids, you can add in more different elements that they're used to with play. So kids' games of Simon Says or dance and then freeze, you can add that into a lot of different movements. But again, kids will like it, kids' games, and they're used to that. But for adults, those same kids' games can work great for them, right? There's that nostalgia element, and it's something that you might think, oh, this is something for kids. No, adults can have fun with the exact same aspects of it.
That's amazing. So let's revert a little bit to what brought you to this stage. I mentioned a little bit in your bio about juggling and your performance background and things like that. So what has been your journey up to this point, and bringing in that aspect of juggling?
Yeah, so a lot of what I do now with the HandEyeBody programs, it's a mix of my juggling and my PhD research, my academic research that was all around community building and collaboration. So going back, I learned to juggle when I was 10 years old. I played basketball since I was 2, basically, dribbling, ball handling drills, and kind of that evolved into juggling. And then I started up student performances as an undergraduate. And then when I went to grad school, started both my research track as well as starting up a juggling club and shows on campus. So I've always done a combination of my community building research and the juggling and from the entertainment side of things. My research in biomedical informatics, most of the field it's technology and computers for healthcare. But there's lots of different aspects to it. And my focus really was not tools for just the doctors and the clinics in the hospital, but how do you involve the whole community in a collaborative design? So how do you involve all of the nonprofit support programs? How do you get the families to participate in a collaborative design of the new online tools? But they're not tech people. So how do you really build that synergy, create those opportunities for them to feel not just a part of the process, but really provide those key ideas that they're learning, you're learning, everyone's working together. So a lot of what I do now, I kept going with the juggling. I started up a social enterprise where we tour around the world doing events where every time we're brought into a corporate event or team building training program, we donate a visit to a nonprofit like a children's hospital or Boys and Girls Club and things like that. And a lot of our outreach with that was teaching, not just doing a show, but teaching. And from there, I started to figure out different aspects of how can you really make the teaching accessible. It doesn't have to be about 3-ball juggling, and especially in a short period of time, you can't really get too far into that. And so what are the 1 and 2-ball fun challenges and exercises that anyone can pick up in a short period and really start getting those brain body benefits from? So it really did evolve from that, a lot of it from the juggling side and all the movements and the teaching, but then that thinking of, okay, how do you share this knowledge for health and wellness in a broader framework, in a just a wider reach, using online tools and communities?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, of course, I am one of those people that, going back to that motto of I can't versus I can. I've always said until I met you, I can't juggle 3 balls. I've never have. I don't know how to. I don't. But that was the big one. It's I don't know how to. Not that I can't. I haven't learned. I haven't been taught the correct way, the correct path.
Yeah.
And in setting this all up, I wanted to just look what is the record of juggling, and like what I putting 3 balls in the air and figuring all that out, like the mental capacity, like where that is in our brain, what lobes are firing, what cortical processes are happening all at the same time as we go through it. And that learning curve and that motor skill curve might be there, but at what point do we kind of tap out with some of the best jugglers? And I kind of saw that 9, and that's a lot. I mean, it's only 3 times more than 3 in one aspect, but to keep that many things up in the air and working through that. Have you used your training to heal others and see how juggling, hand-eye body movement, throwing and catching balls, however we want to say it, has improved people's neurological capacities and cortical activation?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's one aspect of the mindset, right? Going from that I can't to I can. But then just on more of that neuroplasticity side of things and the actual brain and body connections, I've done programs working with seniors, for example. And I've done a program where it was a group of seniors who had dementia, for example. And I did an activity, everyone was sitting around a table, so it's just with one soft ball that they're passing and sharing back and forth. And the staff at the senior center afterwards was saying they haven't seen them light up like that in months, right? So it's tapping into movements, and it's got the vision component, and then all of it is going through your brain, right? Your eyes see the ball, and then your brain processes where to move your hand to react to catch it. So even if you're not adding any additional cognitive components, the hand-eye coordination pieces go through the brain. And so another example is a lot of the trainers who work with me, because I do a program where it's training trainers. So whether it's a teacher, a coach, a therapist, I working with them on how to incorporate these exercises, these movements, and several who work with Parkinson's disease. So people who have Parkinson's disease, and a lot of their challenges, for example, freezing of gait, where they're not able to move, right? Between the brain and the body, they're not moving. And there are different ways to try to address that. And some of what, when the trainers and coaches have you learned the hand-eye body movements with the ball, they've described how they'll give them the ball on this specific movement, and it just unlocks them and they're able to walk. So a lot of even if I haven't always seen it directly, a lot of the people that I'm teaching are just describing all of these different benefits in all different areas, even ones that haven't directly worked with myself.
Well, I have to say, as a trainer working with neurological disorders and helping with the neuroplastic change for bettering movement skills and health aspects, one of the hardest things is how I then apply that to myself. I can give it to other people, and I can be that external source of reactive training for someone, but then it becomes very frustrating understanding the huge benefits of what I'm providing people and not being able to provide that to myself. And And these aspects that you're talking about have changed that for me, because now a ball is reactive. It bounces, I throw it against a wall, I'm looking at letters on the ball, and whatever it might be, I can now train myself in that same reactive capacity.
And I've found that one of the nice things about it, because a lot of my approach, it's not just about the movements and the neuro brain and the physical abilities. It's that mindset, and it's also the connection, the opportunities for people to connect in that training, in that exercise environment. So one of the quotes that I really like and guides a lot of what I do, it's from an old comedian named Victor Borga, and he said, "Laughter is the shortest distance between two people," right? So that guides so much of what you can do, both as a teacher and a student even, right? Or a trainer and a client, that if you can work on things, not just that you as a coach have done lots and lots of, and then you're trying to teach it and it's new for that other person. If you're learning something new alongside your student or your client, and you're both learning together, you can laugh together and play and drop and pick it up, and it creates a different connection that you have in that teaching, sharing. And you can say, hey, come up with a challenge based on this movement for me to do that I've never done before. And so the student can be more creative, and so because it's something that isn't part of the traditional fitness or workout or exercise plans for a lot of people, even for coaches, hand-eye coordination and these types of creative movements are often left off from a lot of learning. It gives that opportunity for the teacher or trainer to learn alongside and experience those same feelings. I'll sometimes describe, if you're teaching 5th grade math and you've taught it for 20 years, you can only fake a growth mindset, right? Oh, I guess I messed this addition up, but you really know it so well, you don't feel what's frustrating for your students. And so if you can find ways to feel that same frustration and growth yourself, it builds empathy for how you relate. And when you do it together, it's just that bonding and connection that you don't experience in a lot of other types of ways. So that's I think a big part of it as well.
That empathy component is a huge one, right? As trainers, as coaches, we go through these. We work with people with Parkinson's. We work with people that are stroke rehab, and we know how to get them from A to B, but we sometimes don't really realize, how much activation, how much they're sweating trying to, lift their arm up and things like that. And I think that goes into it. And I know that from having done many of your trainings, I have had some major laughing moments. I love the quote from Victor Borga because I remember posting once one of your videos in just learning it, and I said, well, I got more cardio than I did hand-eye coordination because I was just running after my ball everywhere. But it also connected me to wanting to learn it, excited to get it. And when I did, it was a rush. It was amazing. It was like something that didn't happen at all to something that was like so natural. And going back to what you were saying about working with seniors and dementia, they say there are 3 things that are critically most important as we age. And they talk about learning a new language, playing a musical instrument, or incorporating as many cortical activations as possible is the best way to keep strong, active neural activation and brain health. And when you start to see people with Alzheimer's or dementia incorporate these types of skills, it really neurologically makes a difference. It's not just that placebo effect that really causes that change.
Yeah, and even with just what you described, that people might say, listening or playing music or learning an instrument. The interesting thing to me about that is most people have the sense that you can throw and catch a ball. And in those same lists, you might see they say throw and catch a ball. With playing an instrument, people get and understand that there are infinite songs you can play on the piano, right? It's not just play that scale. There's infinite songs you can play and all different ways you can make it fun or play and sing or do it, with your family around, whatever it is. People in most of our current cultures today, whatever the instrument is, they have that sense about music, but they don't realize there's so many different ways to play and move just with one ball in the same way, right? It's the list is playing, throw and catch a ball, or learn to juggle. Right?
Right.
But there's the same creativity, the same variations that you can weave together, just like dance or music. And so
right.
that's a big part of
is your pen. You can write any story you want.
Yes. And so I don't think you have to do these hand-eye-body exercises over playing an instrument or dance or whatever. It's all about giving people opportunities to find the things that they enjoy, that they connect with, and giving the novel experiences. So if you're used to dance and you've been practicing that, add in the ball.
Right.
Or if you've been used to playing catch with a ball, do it with a metronome or do it to music or change it up in this different way. So it's giving more opportunities to connect with different people where they're at. And so it can really weave into whether you want to play golf more or yoga or just your general coordination and brain and body movements. It can really be adapted to a lot of different concepts.
And a lot of people get very scared of the word coordination. I hear it all the time. I'm not coordinated.
Yep.
My coordination's poor. I don't do well with coordination. They get scared of choreography, for example, with dance and things like that. So, we've talked a lot about healing people. We've talked a lot about how, it can help people neurologically. And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't have a neurological disorder. Or we all have brains. We can all grow and, get more change and benefit. But for that person listening and thinking, well, I'm not a juggler. I can throw and catch a ball. I don't have a neurological disorder. Why should they care? What benefits will they see by having improved hand-eye coordination?
Well, there are so many different benefits, and it really can tie into what are your goals. So if you do play recreationally, tennis or golf or yoga, right, it'll help improve your ability to get your brain and body working together so you can know where your body is in space to do the moves correctly. But even if you play no sports, do no yoga or movement of any kind, you can also think about it as just a fun way to get moving, right? Because if you don't do any of those sports and yoga and nothing like that, you're just sitting around, well, maybe you need to get up and moving a little more. And this is a fun way to add a playful element to encourage you to get moving, just like how you described with that you got more aerobic exercise from chasing the ball around. Just getting up and moving and making it fun is valuable. But it's also, again, not about the more physical fitness side, but just your brain, taking brain breaks, being able to step away if you're working on a challenging problem at work and not just trying to figure it out, step back, do something different, right? Have you ever gotten ideas in the shower, right? When you're going through those movements, that flow state. So take a brain break away from your desk, do a movement, and then come back and, or rest on it and come back. When I was writing my dissertation, I would be writing, then step away for 10 minutes, throw the balls in the air, go back, write some more. And so there's a lot of ways you can use it, both for physical abilities, your just mental wellness, and again, just neuroplasticity in general. The more you use different aspects of your brain and have practice, right? You're building those learning pieces that when you want to do something more, or even things you do every day, walking, right? As you get older, preventing falls is important. Driving a car, you've got to have your hands on the wheel, your foot on different pedals, you're looking at the road, you're reacting to everything around you. So being safer in that context. And then just when you don't want to drop your $1,000 phone on the ground when you're picking something up, being able to quickly grab it.
No,
now
I agree, and I really appreciate that you fleshed it out for people, giving these examples, because a lot of people don't pay attention to how important coordination is, and people rest on the fact that they have it until they don't, right? Until they realize they think that that's how it is. That's just aging, whatever it might be, and you know, speaking to this audience about how important this coordination aspect is and how integral it is into every day of your life, from not dropping your phone to it dropping, but you having the reactive skills to catching it, to whatever sport you want to play, to whatever daily activity you participate in, to being able to see something coming at you and being able to catch it or move, having that. We talk about neural hierarchy a lot, and in each one of my guests in these episodes, neural hierarchy has come up. And I think when it comes to hand-eye coordination, it is right up there with explaining how critical it is. And, you know, having this visual parameter as our most important component, which obviously we are using, and then it's that vestibular aspect, because the eyes are moving. You know, we tend to read screens, and we tend to fixate on screens, and getting our eyes to bounce up and down and jump from side to side and do all these things is something, and working our vestibular system and having our heads drop quickly and all these kinds of things. And then, of course, our proprioceptive system, as you mentioned, knowing where our hand is, knowing where the ball's going to go.
Yes. And it's not just, you know, when I say the program as hand-eye body, it's not just hand-eye coordination. You're always using hand-eye coordination with other body movement. So if you're preventing falls and you might want to grab onto a railing, that's while you're moving. It's everything. It's not just your hands and eyes. You're doing it in your whole three-dimensional environment where your whole body is moving. And so it really is that way to think as not just, oh, I want to improve my hand-eye coordination. Practicing your hand-eye coordination will help your balance, because if you're trying to balance, let's say you're balancing on one foot and adding disturbing the balance so your weight is shifting, using a ball movement and throwing and catching is a great way to practice that. So it's not just about improving your hand-eye coordination. You can use the hand-eye coordination exercises to improve your balance, to improve all the other things that you're working on. And just think about it even as just injury prevention, right? Not just as you age. So as you age and keep working your brain and body and keeping that active, but just in general, if you've ever, when you think about your body awareness and making sure your brain is connecting and your brain is responding to what your body is doing, and it's all seamless. Think about, have you ever stepped off a curb or the stairs where you thought there was, you know, one more stair, or right, you're like, whoa, right? And you could hurt your knee by stepping in a way where you think there's another stair, or the curb is bigger or smaller, right? Because your knee is prepared for one height and your leg is prepared to step for one height, but for what your brain is telling it, but then that's different for what's happening. So the more you can make sure that your eyes and your senses can see your environment around you, and your brain can react and send the right signals to your body. Again, that's just a very simplified view of it, but you can get a sense of that full body coordination and incorporating the vision, the cognitive processing of that. That is something that's important for injury prevention, not just walking down the stairs, but before a workout, or if you're doing things
endless. Absolutely. So there's something that really resonates with me. Your 3M approach. It's something that I base every session of any age bracket, any condition around. So the 3Ms: movement, modifications, and mindset. Is that the correct?
Yes.
Movement, modification, and mindset. And I am under the exact same thing with you. Can you quickly flesh those out a little bit about why this 3M approach is so critical to success?
Yes. So, and again, it's not like no one's ever done movements and modifications before, but it's a way just to really keep your focus on not leaving out one of them. It's easy to do one and forget about the others. The whole idea is you've got all the different movements you can do. So if you're doing something with your let's say balance, how can you add in another movement on top of that? Maybe throwing and catching a ball while you're standing on one foot. Or if you're doing, right, your footwork movements, what can you do with your upper body at the same time? So the first step is just thinking about all the different ways you can combine and add in different types of movements. Hand-eye coordination with a ball, with other objects, just mixing in footwork. So that's the movements. And like I said, it's not just throwing and catching a ball. There's a whole library of ways to think about movements that you might not have considered before. Then modifications, if you're doing a movement that might be too hard or too easy for any given person, you really need to make sure that it's accessible for each person and challenging. So you don't want it boring for an advanced athlete, and you don't want it too hard to even get started for someone who hasn't really moved as much or has more limited mobility. So modifications are really thinking about how you can adapt an exercise both for different ability levels as well as specific goals and purposes. So making it connect to what a person's goals are. So if it's for, let's say you're a football wide receiver and your goal is to catch better over your shoulder, right, on the run, then you can design the exercises around that. If you are more in yoga, for example, you can weave in exercises around different poses, right? So if you're in tree pose, right, what can you do with the ball while you're standing there and moving with your hands? But so really it's all about just connecting the movements to the person's functional or desired goals and context that they're working in. And then again, the mindset, if you see someone doing a drill, it's so easy just to say, okay, let's just do that drill and that's it. But you're missing the opportunity to tap into that mindset, like the growth mindset, right? Really get them to understand that it's okay to drop. You don't have to be perfect. You can pick it up, keep going, and taking the time to just pause, evaluate what you could do differently each time, right? So that mindset piece is very easy to leave off, especially if you're working with someone or giving them an exercise, but it can be the biggest transformation that someone can experience when you find ways to tap into connecting what they're feeling and doing to a way to think that they can use beyond just that hour-long session that they're working with you in. So having all those elements, you don't have to emphasize everyone equally. It's just a reminder to think about how am I incorporating a little bit of each one at an appropriate level and not forgetting about that.
That's amazing. I really appreciate it. It resonates with me so strongly, and how I believe we should be approaching movement in general with the aspect of modifications and mindset being very much a part of that. And I appreciate that explanation. I think it helps people better understand why they should care and why they shouldn't be so hung up on not regressing or progressing a movement and keeping that mental component alive. There was something I saw on your Instagram a few months back, and it was talking about Tourette syndrome and that aspect of it. And this was very surprising to me. Do you mind sharing with the audience a little bit?
Yeah. So you might not always see it, maybe unless you know what to look for when I'm presenting or performing. But if you go backstage, I'll be zipping and unzipping the zipper a bunch of times, right? So when you're in that presenting mode, it's often that kind of flow state. So I got diagnosed with Tourette's when I was 10, which is actually the same age that I learned to juggle. So I actually think there's a connection between what I was able to, the benefits I got from juggling with the Tourette's. I think just being able to move and that the brain body elements, I didn't realize it, at the time, but I definitely think it was a really good mindfulness exercise and way to calm and connect just with the body movements. But yeah, so I've, it's more or less at different ages.
Right. We're not going to make the big, huge statement that juggling can cure Tourette's, but
right.
But I did do some research in understanding what cortical activations take place in the brain from juggling and what portions of the brain tend to be deactivated and understimulated with Tourette syndrome. And it is a puzzle piece that fits perfectly together. And it really enhances that cortical activation in the portions of the brain that are lacking in Tourette syndrome. And that is huge. And that is powerful. I mean, those are answers for people to realize that the brain is powerful, but we have control over those neural pathways.
Yeah. And Tourette's is it's kind of the neuro movement disorder, and just, Parkinson's is another one. And so I see it in there's more happening, I think, around Parkinson's with movement and coordination exercises. But there's been some programs really working more on yoga with Tourette's. And again, a lot of what I'm doing, I don't view it as completely different from yoga. It's just a move. When you add a ball in, what can you do differently? Yoga in some ways, it's like, okay, we've got our hands, our legs, our different positions we can be in. Let's come up with all the different ways this can work. And so what I'm doing is say, okay, you add a ball. Now what can you do? But it's a lot of the same brain and body benefits. And so if you're applying something like yoga to Tourette's or Parkinson's or something neuro, that I think that there are things when you add in a ball that it may be different, may be the same, but it's just another way to tap into those kind of feelings and neuro side of things.
That's amazing. Okay, so we are going to do a lightning round of questions. I have the same list of questions that I do with every guest, and it's just fun. It's the first thing that comes to mind for you. So here we go. You ready?
All right.
All right. Working out, morning, afternoon, or night?
I would say afternoon.
Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Planks or squats?
Squats. I do not like my wrist. With juggling, I'm like, protect the wrist.
Shoes or barefoot?
Shoes.
Coffee or tea?
Neither. Water.
Okay. Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Music or silence?
A mix, different times. I'll go with music.
Heat or cold?
What was it?
Heat or cold?
Heat.
Inside or outside?
Inside.
Jasmine or peppermint?
Peppermint.
Spontaneous or planned?
Planned.
Last one. Learn something new or perfect something known?
I'm not about learning anything new, so I guess no. Yeah, I'll go with learn something new.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jacob Weiss. I can't thank you enough for being on this episode. It has been a joy. It has been a lot to learn about how simplistic movements can expand out, how a ball can become a pen to write your journey and write your story, and that it is never ending regardless of where we are. And I now leave the floor to you. Is there anything you would like to add? Let people know. We will mention in the bio how they can contact you and find you, HandEyeBody Academy, how they can join and participate. But the floor is yours. Anything you would like to share? Because I know we only barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, I really, it's just, again, going back to that mindset piece of if you see someone and you think, oh, I'm not coordinated, how much have you really tried? How many hours have you put in working on it? If you played team sports, basketball, soccer, or something when you were a kid, and then thought, oh, I'm not coordinated, just from what you experienced when you were a kid, and you're still holding on to that, give yourself the opportunity to be a beginner, get into that beginner's mindset, and you'll surprise yourself at what you actually can do, no matter how old you are.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Jacob. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing all of you next month at another episode of At the Core.